Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte
We'll see.
Pelosi, a couple minutes ago you told some of us that you were shaken by the news about James Mattis's resignation. Why are you shaken by this news?
Well, I'm shaken by the news because of the patriot that General Secretary Mattis is. I think that everybody in the country should read his letter of resignation. It's a letter of great patriotism, great respect for the president, but also a statement of his values, where he talks about the strength of our nation is intrinsically linked to the strength of unique and comprehensive system of alliances that we have. That he talks about that we must be resolute and unambiguous in our approach to those countries whose strategic interests are increasingly in tension with tensions with ours. The list, it's a beautiful letter about, again, our values as a nation in terms of our national security, written by a patriotic American who was a comfort to many of us as a voice of stability in the Trump administration. So just look at this week. The president taking troops out of Syria without really full consultation with the national security leaders of his own administration. The president taking actions that encouraged his Secretary of Defense to issue a letter of resignation. His reversing his position about signing a bill. Maybe he thinks if government shut down, he can golf more comfortably. That's not how it works. Government must work, even if you're golfing for 2 weeks. So there's something very wrong with this picture. And this resignation is one we just were briefed a week ago by Secretary Mattis and Secretary Pompeo, and that was last Thursday, so it was 1 week ago. Our troops look to Secretary Mattis as a leader, and now he is going to be leaving them. This is very serious for our country. I yield.
Yeah. Secretary Mattis was one of the few symbols, the few items of strength and stability in this administration. Everything that indicates stability, everything that indicates strength, everything that indicates knowledge is leaving this administration. General Kelly, General Mattis, so many others. McMaster, exactly. There is chaos now in this administration. This week was one of the most chaotic weeks we've ever seen in American government. And amazingly, they want to close the week, President Trump does, by shutting down the government. Shutting down the government. Now, we all know that Secretary Mattis had real disagreements with the president on Syria and on the wall. Some have speculated that the president was going to demand that he start building a wall, which he knows he can't do by law. And maybe that's one of the reasons he stepped down.
It is Friday, the 21st of December of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, Donnie has been up and busy this morning. Well, at least his thumbs have been busy. He's been tweeting up the proverbial storm, threatening that if he doesn't get his $5 billion today, the government will shut down. And it's just part of the plan. I keep telling everybody, property is much more valuable when it is delivered vacant. And from deregulations on asbestos all the way down to, shutting down the government. Seems like a master plan, almost like that Soviet 70-year plan they had. Now it's a 70-year plan. There's just not the Soviet part in front of it anymore. Well, that's pretty scary. And what else is scary? Oh, well, General Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, thought that it's time to go. Mad Dog Mattis. That guy is named Mad Dog Mattis for a reason, and he thinks that Trump is too crazy for Mad Dog Mattis. Now, let's be clear. He is not leaving until February something, okay, which is good because he is still in line to get those nuclear codes and, maybe not push the button. So we got him in there for that. Adult in the room. A guy by the name of Mad Dog Mattis is the adult in the room. Wow, all those stories they told about how the hippies would turn things out, and I don't know. Projection once again, dare we presume? Hey, at the top, that was Nancy Pelosi shaken at the news of Mattis's resignation, but stirred at the prospects of our nation changing. The prospects of our nation changing on January 3rd. We still have a fight ahead of us. We still have Mitch McConnell in the Senate gumming things up. Oh, yeah, he put out some sort of announcement about Mattis's resignation. Let us not forget that it was both Ryan and McConnell who threatened Obama that if they brought out the fact that the Russians were at war with the United States during an election, that McConnell will just call it politics. The black guy is trying to scare you. And now McConnell is, he seems like a stalwart patriot now. God, there's going to be a lot of people going to jail. Not because of politics, but because of actual crimes. And crimes of conspiracy with a hostile foreign nation. I will say once again, I know treason can only be ascribed when we are in a declared war, when Congress declares a war. I will argue that when a hostile foreign power declares war against us, anyone who helps out that hostile foreign power is a traitor. But that's just me. What's on the rest of the menu here today? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, do not fret. The French 77s are being stirred as we speak. Not shaken, stirred. Well, Trump wants to kick people off of food stamps since Congress wouldn't. Merry Savage Christmas. That bigoted GOP Georgia gubernatorial candidate behind the deportation bus is indicted for a fake burglary scheme. I wonder if he blamed it on a black guy. And the Department of Justice indicted 2 Chinese spies for hacking the U.S. Navy, NASA, And more importantly, businesses across various sectors. You just don't do that. After the break, we then move to the chef's table, where an anti-Obamacare lawyer decimated his own case in an interview with a conservative outlet. And the conservative outlet said, man, this guy is like pretty out there. And the wonder-filled baby Jesus stories were late additions to Christian lore and were centuries in the making. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Know that the French consider bon appetit to be crass, crude, grating on the ear, brash, just loud, very loud. And they tend to not use it because of that. And I use it here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy because I think it describes America and we Americans just fine. Yeah. In fact, whenever I've been in Paris, whenever you hear a really large commotion around the corner, you never know if it's a group of Germans or Americans until you turn the corner, and then you can figure it out. Go to Germany. You don't hear that kind of commotion in Germany, but you will in Paris, and it's always these two groups, Germans or Americans. I know there are British hooligans, but that's only during soccer season. I'm talking about year-round. You can count on the British hooligans during certain parts of the year, but not all year round. So I just figured bon appetit is perfect because we are Americans, aren't we? Okay, enough of that. A little bit of tidbit of information. If you go to the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link on the rightish of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Do check out her shows on Saturday. First one being At the Table with Kelly Lincoln begins at 3 p.m. on the West Coast. That is 6 p.m. on the East Coast. A few hours later, she then teams up with Ricky May for the Round Table Roundhouse Power Hour, beginning at 9 p.m. on the West Coast, and that is midnight on the East Coast, and it goes for a full power hour. Yes. Now, if you would take a gander to the leftish of the page from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the contribute button, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, now more than ever is it important. Bills have gone up. And we've always been able to make this work with just a shoestring. And now is the tenable thread. So if you could please help us out, it would be much appreciated. And if you could afford even one cup of coffee a month, boy, that goes a long way for us. So thank you for your generosity. Do follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that platform, and we are forever grateful for that. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, so check that out because they are the show notes and links. You can follow West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Twitter at Cookbook West and pick up podcasts of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeart, iTunes, and wherever fine podcasts can be found. Hey, it's Friday. We will have a show of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy on Monday, But we may be in holiday programming for Christmas Day, and I know that a lot of our, we call them content providers, shows during the day, a lot of those folks are going on holiday hiatus, and if they don't have an extant show already with us, we'll put in some holiday programming, as we normally do during holidays when our lovely content providers are on vacation themselves. So just a heads up, we will have River City Hash Mondays, but we're going to take Christmas Day off. All right. Let's take a look at this first article here in the Bistro Cafe, a West Coast cookbook and speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Don't forget about the French 77, and I have to warn you, they are so good, do not drink more than 2. You can, but I wouldn't get behind the wheel. In fact, drink a bunch of water if you happen to drink 2 rather quickly. But you want to sip it anyway. They're so good. And Dan Desai Martin brings us this first offering here from Think Progress. A week before Christmas, Trump is literally planning to take food away from struggling families. The Trump administration will propose a draconian rule that could cause hundreds of thousands of families to lose access to nutritious food. Under current rules, the overwhelming majority of able-bodied adults who receive food stamps must also try to find employment. But states whose unemployment rates are at least 20% higher than the national rate can apply to waive the work requirement so that families can keep putting food on the table even during a localized economic downturn. But Trump wants to change all that because he is Scrooge. And that's being nice to the traitor. The USDA is now proposing that states could waive the requirement only in areas where unemployment is above 7%. That's a huge increase from about 4.5% under the current rule and the current national unemployment rate. More than 750,000 people who receive food assistance live in areas that would lose the waivers. Those people will have to jump through unnecessary bureaucratic hoops in order to feed their families and could even risk losing their benefits. And I need to point out, the vast majority of people on SNAP, food stamps, are white. And the vast majority of people on SNAP, food stamps, are already working. How about raising the wage? You know, maybe it might help. Oh, I know. Well, why don't those people get a little bit of fortitude and get a better paying job? Yeah. First you tell them to get a job, and then you whine because you don't pay them enough, and it's their fault. Got it. Yeah. Well, Trump is trying to use his executive power to subvert the will of Congress. Trump begged Congress to pass the harsher food stamp work requirements using the Farm Bill. And Republicans like failed retiring Speaker Paul Ryan tried to do Trump's bidding. In the end, however, Democrats stood united against this cruelty, and Ryan did not have enough GOP votes to make them budge. The final Farm Bill was a victory for compassion and a defeat for Republicans, and I got to tell you, that will not stand. What Congress failed to do through proper legislative channels, Trump is now trying to do on his own, because everybody wants government to be run like a business, and business is run as a dictatorship. It's not a democracy. Well, that's not how executive rulemaking is supposed to work, said Senator Debbie Stabenow, the lead Democrat on the Senate Agriculture Committee. Congress writes laws, and the administration is required to write rules based on the law. Administrative changes, Stabenow said, should not be driven by ideology. I do not support unilateral and unjustified changes that would take food away from families. And the Republicans go, yeah, well, but that's our reason d'etre. The cruel food stamp proposal is far from the first attempt by Trump and Republicans to attack the poorest members of our society. The GOP spent months crafting a disastrous health care bill that would have kicked millions of families off their health insurance because we had a black president for 2 terms, and we have to be punished. We were warned we would be punished if we elected the black guy. We did it twice. And that's why we are being sold up the river to the Russians. They warned us that we would be punished, and punished we are. In the Charles Dickens classic, by the way, A Christmas Carol, a person approaches the wealthy Ebenezer Scrooge seeking a donation to help those in need. At this festive season of the year, Mr. Scrooge, it is more than usually desirable that we would make some slight provision for the poor and destitute who suffer greatly at the present time, the man pleads. Well, Scrooge scoffs that the poor should hurry up and die and decrease the surplus population. The Republican Party, and especially Trump, seem to favor Scrooge's approach to Americans who are struggling, because if you decrease the surplus population, property is always more valuable when delivered vacant. This next offering here at the Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, comes our way from Alternate by Matthew Chapman during the Republican gubernatorial primary in Georgia. One candidate, State Senator Michael Williams, exploded into national prominence with a racist stunt. He unveiled a deportation bus covered with messages like, "Fill this bus with illegals, follow me to Mexico, danger, murder, rapists, kidnappers, child molesters, and other criminals on board." Which is weird because he's driving the thing and it's only his staff in it. Okay, well, they always tell you what they are. He then proceeded to drive this bus all over the state, which prompted extensive media coverage, widespread protests, and a ban from Cracker Barrel. When you got a bunch of crackers banning you at Cracker Barrel for being way more extreme than any cracker would ever think about being, you know it's bad. In the end, Williams' campaign flamed out spectacularly, with him taking less than 5% of the vote, but he may well get something out of his candidacy after all. Criminal prosecution for insurance fraud. These people are so brazen. He probably figures, hey, look, we got a mobster in the Oval Office, just blatant as can be. Make your crimes public in the most splashy way, and you'll get away with it. On Thursday, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reported that Williams is now under an indictment. The charges issued Tuesday by Hall County authorities relate to a May incident where Williams reported that his Gainesville office was burglarized. At the time, Weathers said $300,000 worth of computer servers were taken from the building. Williams is accused of lying to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation when he said he was at home in Forsyth County, not in the Gainesville area at the time of the purported burglary. The indictment, which does not say what allegedly actually happened to the servers, accuses him of making a false insurance claim related to the servers. At the time of Williams reported the theft, campaign spokesman Seth Weathers told reporters that the servers were not part of the campaign and were being used to mine cryptocurrency for a side venture, but that they were set up in Williams' campaign office. Asked for comment, Weathers denies the allegations against Williams. I guess it's the price you pay for being a fearless conservative, like they say. A grand jury can indict a ham sandwich. Wow. Weathers knows which way the winds blow, I suppose. Okay, well, the winner of the GOP primary was Georgia Secretary of State Brian Kemp, who also threatened to fill his truck with undocumented immigrants and ship them across the border in a campaign ad. Kemp, who continued to perform election oversight in the race he himself was running in, defeated, and I want to put quotation marks around defeated, Democratic former Senate Minority Leader Stacey Abrams in an extremely close and nationally publicized election under a cloud of suspicion that his policies administering the election suppressed the votes of his opponent. Offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, is brought to us by a slew of reporters from Reuters, they being Diane Bartz, Alexandra Alper, Lisa Lambert, David Shepardson, Susan Heavey in Washington, Jack Stubbs in London, with additional reporting by Jim Finkel and editing by Will Dunham. U.S. authorities yesterday unveiled indictments against 2 Chinese nationals linked to China's government who took part in a cyber spying campaign that hacked a range of American government agencies and corporations and violated a 2015 pact, escalating tensions between the two nations. The U.S. Justice Department, wait a second, I'm the Justice Department, they are the Department of Justice. I swear to God, after January 3rd, I'm going to start charging royalties. This time I will. I'm not lying. Well, the Department of Justice, there, I did some editing for you there. Will Dunham, I'm looking at you, buddy. Come on now. Well, they charge Zhu Hua and Zhang Jinghua in computer hacking attacks on the U.S. Navy, NASA, and businesses in numerous sectors. The defendants hacked computers to steal intellectual property and confidential business and technological data, according to the indictment. U.S. and British authorities also condemned China for violating 2015 agreements to curb cyber espionage for business purposes, slamming Chinese efforts to steal other countries' trade secrets and technologies, and to compromise government computers. Well, they're just saying, hey, look, Vlad's do it, and he's a mobster. We're actually, government types. U.S. authorities said the 2 defendants who worked in China in association with the Chinese Ministry of State Security were charged with conspiracy to commit computer intrusions, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, and aggravated identity theft. China's goal, simply put, is to replace the U.S. as the world's leading superpower, and they're using illegal methods to get there, FBI Director Chris Wray said at a news conference. Wow, Chris Wray, I thought he was fired already. He's hunkered down. Good for him. The timing of the action may worsen tensions between Washington and Beijing after the arrest of Meng Wanzhou, the chief financial officer of Chinese telecommunications giant Huawei Technologies in Canada at the request of the U.S. U.S. authorities said hacking targets included, this is by the two spies, by the way. And let me just mention real quick, the Huawei CEO or Chief Financial Officer, CFO, may be held as a hostage so that Trump can get what he wants, which is a weird way to do diplomacy and business. But if you're a mobster, it must be normal. Now, the hacking targets by the two spies included NASA's Goddard Space Center and JPL, and companies involved in aviation, space, and satellite technology. The targets also included companies involved in banking and finance, telecommunications, consumer electronics, manufacturing technology, pharmaceutical technology, oil and gas exploration and production technology, communications technology, computer processor technology, and maritime technology. China targeted a who's who of American businesses, Ray said, though he did not name specific companies because that would probably tank their stock. The two spies were members of a hacking group known within the cybersecurity community as Advanced Persistent Threat 10, or AP-10 Group. The defendants worked for a company in China called Huawei Haitai Science and Technology Development Company, or Huawei Haitai. The company shows that elements of the Chinese government are not upholding the commitments China made directly to the UK in a 2015 bilateral agreement, the British government said in a statement. This is the latest in a series of hacking cases brought by the U.S. against alleged Chinese hackers. In October, the U.S. government charged Chinese intel officers with conspiring with hackers and company insiders to break into private companies' computer systems and steal information on a turbofan engine used in commercial jetliners. Now, the hacking effort, which U.S. officials said began in 2006 and ran through 2018, is considered a major threat by private sector cybersecurity researchers and government investigators because of the scale of the intrusions. Let's get to our break, and when we come back, we will go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, a royal bizarre love triangle. The Favorite is such a surreal, farcical tale that one could be excused for thinking that it is a work of fiction. However, it's actually drawn from true events, specifically from an obscure part of history when, in 1711, Britain's Queen Anne, the last of the Stuart monarchs, named Abigail Hill as keeper of the Privy Purse, thus replacing her successor, Sarah Churchill, as her favorite, both politically and personally. Despite its historical roots, The Favorite is very much a modern tale about women in power and the lengths to which they'll go to acquire and maintain it. It also shows how ephemeral power can be in such circumstances. No character embodies this aspect more than that of Abigail, played by a brilliant Emma Stone, who has recently seen a reversal of fortunes and has come to her cousin Sarah for help. Despite the kinship, Sarah has neither the desire nor the time to help, since she's preoccupied being the lover and confidant of Queen Anne. Anne is played by an almost certain to be nominated Olivia Colman and is at best a pathetic character. Childless, partly mad, and suffering from a variety of physical afflictions, Anne is at once both repulsive and sympathetic. As someone who has lost over a dozen children through miscarriage, she channels her maternal instincts to a menagerie of pets and lovers of both sexes. Although being the Queen's favorite is desirable, she is the monarch. Being so is never a smooth ride. Rachel Weisz is both funny and clever as Sarah, although Coleman and Stone steal the show. Much like another movie, Highlander, there can only be one favorite, and the action of these two women vying for the position will likely have the favorite audiences switching allegiances until the credits roll. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. In the jungle, home is anywhere you can raise your babies, while trying not to get gobbled up by somebody else. Take a tiny creature from Brazil, whose name is longer than it is. The Bahia's broad-snout, cascaded tree frog. It likes to hang out in the little ponds that form in cavities within bromeliad plants. These tiny pools are technically known as phytotelmata, from the Greek words for plant and pond. A male finds a bromeliad and attracts a female, who lays her eggs directly into the water. The male stays behind to guard the eggs and the tadpoles, spending the rest of his life within that one plant. But not just any bromeliad pool will do.
It's so crazy that there are some really nice big bromeliads, and I never found our frog there. If I would be the frog, I would like that bromeliad.
Herpetologist Mirko Sole from Brazil's State University of Santa Cruz, quoting his graduate student Amanda Lanter Silva.
But then we made that research and we saw that there were trade-offs.
In all, Sole and his team surveyed 239 bromeliads within a protected part of Brazil's Atlantic rainforest, of which 74 were occupied by frogs. The frogs preferred big bromeliads, but the very largest bromeliads were unoccupied by the frogs, which suggests there's a Goldilocks situation. And the researchers think it has to do with the size of the frogs' alligator-shaped heads. If the bromeliad's water tank was too large, then the frog's head can't form a tight seal around the opening, which would make them and their offspring an easy meal. But if the pool was too small, it might dry out completely.
So they are really picky concerning their houses. They need a clean house with fresh water, and it should not be too large, not too small.
The study is in the journal PLOS ONE. Sole says these findings remind us that we need to think about the nuanced habitat needs of a species when it comes to conservation. It's not enough to breed some frogs and release them into the rainforest. We also need to ensure they're able to find the habitats they need to live, mate, and raise their young. Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. Netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Can Donald Trump, in the name of national security, impose a tariff on peanut butter? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In late December, at a hearing before the three-judge panel of the United States Court of International Trade, the Department of Justice's lawyer was asked this question, which arose in the case filed by steel importers challenging Trump's imposition of tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. Here's the constitutional conundrum. The Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to lay and collect taxes, duties, imposts and excises. Imposts is a good Scrabble word meaning tax and duty, and excises means an internal tax. Think gasoline, cigarettes, and alcohol excise taxes. But in 1962, Congress passed the Trade Expansion Act of 1962, which gives the president the authority to fix tariffs when necessary to protect America's national security. In the past, in general, the Supreme Court has allowed Congress to transfer its authority to the executive branch. However, this case could cross the line. After all, at the hearing, the government's attorney evaded the question on peanut butter because the short answer, it seems from the government's perspective, is yes. Enjoy that PB&J sandwich. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The 700th day of the Trump administration proved to be a chaotic one, more chaotic than usual. MSNBC's Brian Williams attempted to pull together everything that happened on Thursday, December 20th, 2018.
The usual order in our government is not in place tonight. The diligence that dictates the behavior of the White House in normal times is not in place. Here is a loose tally of where we are. The President of the United States under criminal investigation, his children facing possible legal jeopardy, is threatening to shut down the federal government at midnight over funding for his border wall, which he described today as being more like steel slats. The U.S. Senate is being called back to Washington from their Christmas break for a vote on border wall funding that as of now will fail. The Defense Secretary announced his resignation today because he cannot go along with the president's policy, which includes a surprise pullout of U.S. forces from Syria that Trump posted on Twitter. And today's news that a pullout of half the U.S. forces in Afghanistan is under consideration. Defense Secretary Mattis, a four-star Marine general, was openly referred to as the human guardrail in this administration, the last adult in the room. Add to that the stock market headed for the worst December since the 1930s. Here is the New York Times headline tonight: Congress, the military, and the markets were all in upheaval on Thursday. They go on to explain to their readers the news is too much to fit in one story.
We'll do our best to deal with all of it. Defense Secretary James Mattis resigned over differences with Donald Trump on China and Russia, as well as his plan to withdraw U.S. troops from Syria and Afghanistan. In his resignation letter, Mattis wrote, quote, "While the U.S. remains the indispensable nation in the free world, we cannot protect our interests or serve that role effectively without maintaining strong alliances and showing respect to those allies. Because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects, I believe it is right for me to step down from my position." Following criticism leveled at him by Ann Coulter, Rush Limbaugh, and his heroes at Fox So-Called News, Donald Trump changed direction and announced he would not sign a continuing resolution that didn't contain $5 billion for his ridiculous border wall. So, by a 217 to 185 vote, the House narrowly passed a bill that does include $5 billion in wall funding, which has little to no chance of passing the Senate, bringing us ever closer to a government shutdown. Many senators already departed D.C. thinking they were done for the year. Now they're on their way back to vote. Homeland Security Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen faced a heated House Judiciary Committee hearing on Thursday, and she couldn't answer a number of basic questions lawmakers asked her about immigration and border security.
There's so many people who are watching this hearing from my district, and they have some really basic questions. For example, how many legal points of entry are there across the U.S.-Mexico border?
It's late in the day, and I know. So I would. It's about between 20 and 30.
Okay, so certainly more than 20.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, great.
For those keeping track, it's 48.
Secretary, did I understand you correctly to say that as you sit here today, you do not know how many human beings have died while in the custody of the department that you lead, and you, in preparation for today's hearing, you didn't ascertain that number, but you don't know it today?
I don't have an exact figure for you.
Do you have a rough idea?
Sir, what I can tell you
I'm
is...
talking about people who have died in your custody. You don't have the number?
I will get back to you with the number.
She also proved that she has no use for the word the.
From Congress, I would ask for wall. We need wall.
The Washington Post is reporting that Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker was advised by department ethics officials that he should recuse himself from overseeing the special counsel's Russia probe. But his advisors told him not to do it, and so he now has no plans to step aside. NBC's Ken Delanian explains.
The story is a little more complicated than we were first led to believe. It's true that Whitaker has not recused from the investigation, and he's not legally obligated to, but he sought informal ethics advice from the Justice Department, and he was told by an agency ethics official that it was a close call. And if that official were in his shoes, he or she would recommend recusing. Now, Whitaker has decided not to accept that recommendation, and he's moving forward with his role in overseeing the Mueller investigation. But we should understand what that means. The special counsel regulations say that Robert Mueller is not answerable on a day-to-day basis to anybody. And what it means is that major decisions by Robert Mueller could be challenged by either Rod Rosenstein or Matthew Whitaker. And actually, Justice Department officials are telling us that Rod Rosenstein is going to play the leading role in that oversight. But of course, Whitaker retains the authority to make the ultimate decision.
Green Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me.
Donald Trump signed the Farm Bill Thursday, but before he did so, he tweeted about it, quote, Farm Bill signing in 15 minutes, hashtag Emmys, hashtag TBT, along with a video clip of him and actress Megan Mullally singing the theme song of the 1960s sitcom Green Acres.
I got good news.
And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Russian President Vladimir Putin praised the announced pullout of American troops from Syria on Thursday, noting the U.S. never had permission to be there in the first place. Here he was through a translator.
Only the Security Council can make this decision, or you can be there on the invitation of the Syrian government, and we are there on the invitation of the Syrian government. You do not have either of those decisions, so if you've made this decision, it is the right decision.
Separately, Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova praised the U.S. withdrawal, saying it created genuine, real prospects for a political settlement to end the Syrian war. Both of those comments contradict Trump's own characterization of how his announcement is being viewed overseas. Trump tweeted Thursday morning that, quote, Russia, Iran, and Syria, and many others, are not happy about the U.S. leaving, despite what the fake news says, because now they will have to fight ISIS and others who they hate without us. As America's adversaries celebrated Trump's troop withdrawal, top allies were quick to challenge the president's assertion that the Islamic State had been defeated. British Defense Minister Tobias Ellwood said he strongly disagreed with Trump's assessment, arguing that the terror group had instead, quote, morphed into other forms of extremism and the threat is very much alive. Even the pro-Israel lobbying group AIPAC, which has vocally cheered on much of Trump's Middle East policy to date, took issue with the rationale for the troop pullout, saying Trump should be setting policy in conjunction with allies to make sure Iran doesn't expand its presence in Syria. In a possible sign that ignoring America's allies could be causing divisions within the Trump administration, Defense Secretary Jim Mattis wrote in his resignation letter Thursday night that, quote, my views on treating allies with respect and also being clear-eyed about both malign actors and strategic competitors are strongly held and informed by over 4 decades of immersion in these issues. Luke Vargas, The United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We are all Nighthawks in the diner of life. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon, on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit. We are expected to be much warmer than yesterday, with a high topping out about 47 degrees. So we're almost there. We will have an overnight low about freezing, and it looks like we'll have a bit of a drying out period until it looks like, well, we do have an increasing chance of rain tomorrow night, and maybe some rain on Saturday late, but definitely quite a bit of rain on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So we will look at those overnight lows to see if they will get low enough for snow, but we don't look like that will be the case at the elevation I'm at. Right now, winds are out of the east, light and variable, and will remain so through the day and tonight, and then we'll be shifting tomorrow out of the east-southeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour. All right. Pollen is still rated at none. The air quality index is holding at 42 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.17 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles, and relative humidity is at 89%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 53 and partly cloudy. Paris is 58 and cloudy. Rome is 57 and partly cloudy. Kiev, 28 degrees and cloudy. Kabul, 34 degrees with smoke. Not smocking, we're talking about smoke. Hong Kong is 68 and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 48 degrees and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 67 and partly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 53 degrees and cloudy. And New York is 59 degrees Fahrenheit with a rain shower, and you continue to have an active gale warning. So I would say don't even open up those umbrellas, but hold on to your hats. Button up that top button. Stay warm, stay dry, and that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Ian Millhiser brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Late last week, Judge Reed O'Connor, that Texan guy, a former Republican Senate staffer, because they don't have very many smart people, so they gotta, dig the dregs up. Louis Gohmert was already occupied, so they had to get this guy, Reed O'Connor. Well, he has a history of poorly reasoned opinions striking down Democratic policies, and he struck down the entire Affordable Care Act. On Wednesday, one of the lawyers behind this suit attempted to defend O'Connor's opinion. It did not go well. The political operative turned judge's opinion is widely viewed as indefensible, even by many of O'Connor's fellow Obamacare haters. And yet, in an interview with a conservative pundit, healthcare reporter, and author of a book entitled Overcoming Obamacare, Philip Klein, this lawyer, Rob Henneke, with the conservative Texas Public Policy Foundation, took the unpopular view that O'Connor's opinion is defensible. In the process, however, Henneke winds up revealing that he, and O'Connor as well, lack a basic familiarity with one of the Supreme Court's most famous decisions. Henneke's legal argument and O'Connor's opinion proceed in two steps. As originally enacted, the ACA requires most Americans to either carry health insurance or pay higher income taxes. Well, the Supreme Court held that this provision of the law, popularly known as the individual mandate, is a valid exercise of Congress's power to levy taxes. They already did it in Massachusetts when it was called Romneycare. They loved it. You had to have an individual mandate. People had to have skin in the game. That was the Republican argument. Then, in 2017, the Trump tax bill effectively repealed this mandate by reducing the amount of taxes someone without insurance must pay to $0. The first part of O'Connor's opinion treats this repeal as a gotcha moment. If the mandate is constitutional solely because it functioned as a tax, it must now be unconstitutional because a zero tax is no tax at all. It's not until the second part of O'Connor's opinion that he crosses the line into abject lawlessness, having concluded that the deactive mandate is unconstitutional. O'Connor then claims that the entirety of Obamacare must fall along with the nothing burger mandate. To get there, O'Connor pretends that the individual mandate is, in fact, two entirely different legal provisions. Millhiser then goes into the weeds to explain all of that, but what it gets down to is basically gaslighting the Supreme Court. Because of Henneke's defense of O'Connor, it's not that the individual mandate now becomes unconstitutional, the conservative lawyer claims, it's that the judicial basis with which it was saved from being struck down in the first place has been eliminated. But the mandate itself has always been recognized by the court as having constitutional deficiency. Well, that claim is simply wrong. And not just wrong in the sense that most legal analysts disagree with Henneke's interpretation of prior precedents. Henneke is wrong because the Supreme Court explicitly said the opposite. The two sides in the case are not arguing over ambiguous text. They are arguing over whether a lower court can just outright ignore a clear statement by the Supreme Court of the United States.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Valerie Tarico of Alternet brings us this final offering here at the chef's table of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Friday. We're going to take a little crash course in the war on Christmas. Did you know that those wonder-filled birth stories of the baby Jesus probably never happened? They were pretty much made up, and it took them a long time to put them in order. Well, the earliest texts in the New Testament are letters written during the first half of the first century by Paul and other people who used his name, and these letters, or epistles as they are called, give no hint that Paul or the forgers who used his name had heard about any signs and wonders surrounding the birth of Jesus, nor that his mother was a virgin impregnated by God in spirit form. Paul simply says that Jesus was a Jew born to a woman. And then Mark is particularly silent as well. In his gospel, thought to be the earliest of the four gospels, and so closest to the actual events, doesn't contain a nativity or a creche, because St. Francis of Assisi made the first creche. Okay, come on. In Mark, the divinity of Jesus gets established by wonders at the beginning of his ministry, and some Christian sects have believed that he was adopted by God at this point. Well, there's many reasons why these were put into place because part of the way that you capture hearts and minds is that you adopt the local myths and stories as your own. And the next thing you know, people are paying taxes to you in the form of Roman coins, maybe. All right, let's get out of here. We're at the end of our broadcast period for the day and for the week. Hey, it's going to be holiday period coming up here, but we're going to be back here on Monday for River City Ash Monday on Christmas Eve Day. You know, Netroots Radio is going to be broadcasting on throughout all the weekend, throughout all the holidays, in fact, so do stay tuned for that. So stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here on Monday, a holiday Monday, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.